We have a bankrupt federal government run by foreign banks that want people off the public land. The federal government's got more than half the land in this country, upwards of 80% of the land out west, 90% of Nevada. And they don't want people using the open range that predates fences coming in the 1870s and 1880s. In Mexico, in all the national parks, I've been to a couple big ones that have big rolling hills and grass and desert. There's sheep and cows, folks, and the people aren't paying to be on it because they've always been there, and they have the grazing rights to it. One reason Mexico City's gotten so huge is that in southern Mexico, the only area that was able to stop it was the Chiapas area. But in all the other areas, they forced everybody off their land because they didn't have deeds to it. They'd been there for thousands of years. It's the same thing. All over the world, the globalists, the UN, under Agenda 21, is forcing rural populations off land. And if you own the land, they're going to come take it from you with regulations and taxes. Now, I take you now live to Nevada, right there on the border with Arizona, with the sixth-generation family, and we have Ammon Bundy, the son of the rancher who's been standing up, Cliven Bundy. But first is David Knight giving us a report on what he's seen since he got there. David Knight reporting. David, thanks for coming on, and thanks for going out there.
Thank you, Alex. We're here at the protest area, and I've got Ammon Bundy standing right next to me. You know, you were talking about people being tasered last night, and there was some real brutal things that happened there, but I want to let him tell you why they were there. As you mentioned before, this is about rights. If they can take their grazing rights, if they can take their water rights, they can take your rights, your property rights at your home. So if you're not a rancher, you don't know any ranchers because they're going out of business left and right. And this is a small family business that's been here for over about 140 years. And let me let you hear from Ammon what happened last night. He was one of the people that got tasered last night. Ammon, tell us what happened last night.
Well, just to set the area, they've got this land around 600,000 acres completely locked down. If you step off the road, they arrest you. And they don't just be nice about it. They knock you on the ground, rub your face in the ground, handcuff you, and take you off. That's how they're doing it. So they literally, by force, have closed this land off and have occupied it. And one more thing to set the setting here. If almost every wash and every canyon, if you will, here, and every road has either an agent on it or has a camera in it to make sure that people are obedient to what they say. And anyway, and I'm not exaggerating that one bit.
That's just
okay. So yesterday we've already had citizens run to the ground and arrested. So the other day, and I'll just tell you two incidences. The other day we had a citizen, a 16-year-old boy that pulled off here where he's been his whole life, went down to the river here, and we saw about 5 or 6 of their agents or vehicles go down there. And so we rushed over there to protect him because of what happened before. And they were on their way to doing the exact same thing to him. And we had to, basically push them off this 16-year-old boy to get him to and protect him. And we did back him down. There was about 40 of us. Then yesterday, where most of the activity that got a lot of news here, the way it started is they came down off this mountain and there was 14 units. And one of them was a dump truck with a backhoe on a trailer behind it. And the other 13 units were protection units, heavily armed for this dump truck and this backhoe. And we saw them come off this hill, so we took the opportunity to protest them. But we also felt that it was crucial that we understood what in the world was in the back of that dump truck. Mm-hmm. They've been chasing these cattle all over this country, and it's been a hot year so far. It was over 90 degrees already. And these cattle can't run very long before they overheat, and it'll kill them. Also, we know that they've been separating these mothers from their calves. This is calving season for us right now. So they're separating these young calves from their mothers. And we are seeing cattle that have tight bags, meaning where are their calves? Their calves are separated, lying under a bush, getting ready to die or dying.
Mainstream media is saying, Bundy claims he crazily owns this land that's federal. Isn't he nuts? knowing people who aren't ranchers don't know about this, don't know that 80-something% of the West is federal, don't know 90% of Nevada is federal, don't know they just power grabbed it and said, well, we administer it now, but you can still have your grazing rights. So I want to go back to his son to give him the floor, Ammon Bundy, who was tasered, and he's going to show us the wounds from that. And I've seen the video on the local news, the blood pouring out. But when they tasered him, folks ripped the taser out. He was just telling the story of one of the young locals that's gone down to the river. When you're out in the desert, that's where everybody hangs out. On the BLM, quote, land, 90% of the state. They're outside the town, 600,000 acres, and here came the feds racing down to attack him. And they almost had a confrontation, and that's what's going to happen, folks. They're going to beat up a kid. They're going to beat up a woman. They're going to shoot a kid in the back. And I'm telling you, all hell's going to break loose, and I don't want that to happen. We're beating the globalists right now politically. We are hurting them on every front. They want to get a physical confrontation going. They've got the billions of rounds of ammo, the armored vehicles, all of it. They're going to lose that civil war in the first wave. But then they're going to bring in the UN troops after. And by the way, folks, I'm not kidding. This is official State Department plan 7277. This is NLE 09 and NLE 14 that we got that was secret, where it talks about using foreign troops against Americans. This is all real. Now I want to go back to David Knight to finish talking to one of the ranchers who's been physically attacked. And I guess it was his other brother, what was it, that got arrested for no reason and his head slammed on the ground and taken to Las Vegas. Break down, sir, finish up your story about obviously cows dying or what was in the back of the dump truck and the over 250 armed people. I mean, get him to go over all of it, David Knight, and then I want you, David, to break down your take on all this. David Knight.
Alex, we're here with Ammon Bundy, and he's the son of Clive and Bundy, and he was just telling us before the break that they were concerned about this convoy they saw because they had seen a lot of cows that were obviously had been separated from their calves. This is calving season. They're concerned that they're running these calves hard. They're running the cows hard. They're afraid that they're dying. So they wanted to see what was inside this truck, and that was a group of demonstrators. Let me show you first his where he was tasered right here on his neck, and you were also tasered elsewhere, right?
I was tasered on my arm, and then they hit my chest and my stomach. And
you tore it out.
Yeah, either I tore it out or some other people that were with me tore them out. As they were shooting them, they tear them out. And
well, tell us what led up to this, and we want to talk about, because this is a real key thing. This is the key point about this is about their water rights, and that was what this ultimately turned out to be about. But tell us about the incident leading up to that.
All right, so they're coming down. There was 14 units. They were protecting this backhoe and this dump truck. And we stopped the convoy in the intent to see what was in the back of that dump truck. And they immediately came out armed, and 13 units with 2 men and dogs wow. Each, at least 2 men and dogs, fully armed, came out and began to resist us from being able to see what was in the back of that truck. And it got quite heated. It was, pretty much just verbal for a while. And then one of the Rangers came up behind a 59-year-old woman and body slammed her. And after that, it literally exploded into, escalated tremendously.
Slammed her into the ground.
Yeah, from behind. You watch the video. It's from behind.
Yeah.
And then there was a continued confrontation forward, and then they started to tase me. They hit me, and I ripped the first ones off, or actually, it was a combination. There were several people who ripped them off, and then they tased me again, and we ripped them off again. Then they tased me again, and we ripped them off again. And anyway, it got to the point where we pretty much were backing them down. They were trying to stick their dogs on us, and we were...
About how many people did you have?
We had about 50 people, and there was about probably around 30 of them.
Well, armed.
Yeah, fully armed, and basically kept pressing that they needed to get in their truck, they needed to get out of here, and we were able to push them far enough that we did get a look in the back of the truck, and finally pushed them out of there and made them leave.
What did you learn when you looked in the truck?
Well, we thought that possibly going to be a rendering truck. They're going to have animals in there, but we did not find that. What we found was that they're destroying all the water pipes and all the water tanks that are throughout this land that have been here over 100 years.
Destroying the infrastructure.
Right. Sorry, Alex?
They're destroying the infrastructure just like Stalin did in Poland and Ukraine. This is classic war against our infrastructure. NAFTA, GATT, all of it is to shut us down. It was reported yesterday by the LA Times, ranchers are shutting down nationwide. Beef prices are the highest ever recorded. Almost all the ranchers I know have been shut down, even though beef prices are the highest ever because of Big Agra having a bottleneck on the production of the meat packing. And so I want people to understand, this is the shutdown of America. This is Cloward and Piven to bankrupt us we're seeing right now. If you want welfare, you want to come here and have your babies for free, taxpayers will pay for it. If you want to come here and vote to take our guns, you can come into the country. But if you've got the land and the water tanks and the water pipes for 100 years, where the windmills, where this gentleman's great-great-granddaddy set it up, you're not allowed to do that. It will be destroyed by the criminals. Go ahead. Back to David Knight.
I want Ammon to talk a little bit about those water rights, because those water rights, yes, I want Ammon to talk a little bit about those water rights, because those water rights are very much like your property rights. You register your property rights at the county, state level. It's not at the federal level. And they can come in, if we're going to allow this to happen to these ranchers, they're going to do that to us individually. Talk a little bit about the water rights and what they try to do there, because they are destroying infrastructure, not only for you, but for the wildlife that's out here, right?
That's correct. So those water rights were either purchased or inherited from, and originally came from homesteading, okay? And they're throughout this land here, and we have done improvements over the last 100 years and piped those lines down all through this country with tanks and pipes, and the wildlife and the cattle have used that water for 100 plus years. They're tearing those out now. The reason they're doing that is because that is the one thing that ties those rights to this land. See, the grazing rights are also tied to the water. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if they have any, if we have any legal right besides just state taking over its sovereignty, which obviously we want to happen, but it's tied to those waters, and they know that, and that's why when they're tearing these out and they're coming down, that's why one dump truck and a backhoe has 13 armed vehicles on it, because they did not want us to see what was in the back of that, because they are destroying those waters. Now
they know where the critical points are to take our rights, to take our property.
Absolutely, must be. Why in the world would they have 13 armed vehicles, over 30 men with military rifles and dogs to protect one backhoe and a dump truck?
Let me add this point.
Okay.
There's famous cases
down this hill all the time.
There's famous cases out in California, where the guy had the 100 acres right between the two mountains. He was a doctor, no criminal record, and they just came to his house and killed him in a marijuana raid. There was no marijuana. And then the police actually sold and moved into the property, and actually the cops that killed him got the money. And that's all this is asset forfeiture seizure. We have a predatory government, and they state they want to, quote, rewilding half the country completely off limits to humans. They're tearing up the roads everywhere. This is why America's shutting down. And they know people are fleeing out west away from the tyranny of the cities. And this is the war, folks. This is why in Florida they're arresting women that for 10 years, that lady, had her own electric power out in the country. And they saw her on the news. And so they sent the code enforcers to try to take her house. I mean, this is happening everywhere. Your report, David, where they're arresting people for collecting rainwater in Oregon. This is the takeover. Now, I want to talk about, his father said he was concerned about confrontations yesterday. Those indeed happened. We've seen him tasered. We've seen women assaulted by these little coward goons in their costumes, in their little police dogs, and just total cowards. And we've seen their activities. What are the actions planned today? What do they think the next flashpoints could be? What's the game plan going forward?
And he'd like to know what's planned for today. What are the flashpoints going forward? How do you see anything? How do you see it developing today? Well,
actually, we've accomplished quite a bit today already. At dawn, we had around 20 cowboys go out on the public land. And we gathered about 30 head. We did have a small confrontation with them, but they didn't have enough forces to really do a whole lot. They couldn't mobilize fast enough, and we were able to gather those cattle and get them to the ranch. And they're branding the calves and stuff right now. So we've already done some. We have a lot of people here that will be here protesting. We also have we're starting to get the state to start realizing their responsibilities. So we have 5 state representatives that will be here addressing the people at 5 o'clock. And so that's what's going on today. Let me ask you about the auction, because there was news that they were going to try to auction off the cattle. I saw something as we were flying out here. I read that they were going to originally auction them off in Utah. Utah said no. What's the status of the auction of the cattle that they've rustled so far? Well, they had paid the auction $300,000 to take the cattle, because obviously they must have known that there would be some commitment that the cattle. They were not able to do that. One is Utah's not allowing them to be transferred to the auction yard, and then they were opposed so heavily that if they continued it, the auction yard would have gone out of business. So we imagine, and we don't know this for sure, but we imagine that they're looking for other ways to sell these cattle. We don't know that the cattle have left the compound over here or not, but we actually have airplanes in the air. Finally, we've been able to get airplanes in the air to confirm that, and I haven't got that report. Our goal is to keep those cattle from leaving this area by the people's voice, and then take them back. Let me ask you one last question if we got time, Alex. I was talking to your mother earlier, and she said, at the point, there used to be 53 ranches right around here. You're the last ranch in the area. And at the point where the 52 other ranches went out, she said that they had reduced the herd allowable to something like 150 head, and they were going to keep them off during the spring, which is the prime time, the calving time, which is right now. But also, I thought it was very curious that these other 52 ranches were bought off by the state of Nevada, not by the federal government. Is that correct? By the county. And you'll have to, there's a lot to that, but one is that proves that there was rights, because the way it was, the federal government manipulated the state and the county to buy those, but then they recognized that there was rights and that they need to be purchased. My dad did not sell, which is an argument of that one time they did recognize those rights. Now, just to make it clear, 53 ranchers did not sell. Many of them were pushed out, regulated to the point that they could not survive. Others died. And I mean by not violent death, but these are, older men, and they died young because they were the pressure anyway, I just talk about a couple of ranchers that actually died of heart attacks. I mean, this is a serious deal. It's extremely stressful on a rancher. The livelihood is very rough, and to get them to just survive in this without the federal regulations is tough. Alex, as you mentioned, this is about rights, and it's very sad to see this happening to these people. I'm reminded of the old days in old England, when the Robin Hood stories where the sheriff and the king said that you couldn't go into the forest to get any food. That's essentially what they're trying to do. If they can run these people off of their land, shut down the family business they've had for 140 years, they can take your property as well. Whether you just have a suburban house, they've probably got a much stronger title than you do if you've been involved in some of these MERS situations. Last comment here, Emin, where would you like to see this happen? What would be a good way for this to be resolved? Well, it must be resolved by the state taking its sovereignty. The state leadership, the governor, and the county leadership, such as the county sheriff, have to step in here and say, no, this is not correct. This is not constitutional. This land is Nevada state land, and the laws of Nevada apply here. This is not the territory, the U.S. territory. Now, so far, the governor, Republican, Sandoval, has been standing on the sideline wringing his hands. But you do have some state reps that are going to show up this afternoon, you think? We do, and of course they're trying to influence the governor to get a backbone in this thing. He's made a couple comments, but he's going to have to answer these people, and I hope he does. We respect him, we need him, and we know that he can be a leader, and we want him to lead and recognize his sovereignty here. Well, thank you very much, Hammond. Thank you for standing for our rights as well. I'm sorry this is happening to your family. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Other points you'd like to add about what we're seeing? I mean, this is history. These ranchers are hard folks. It's a really hard life out there, and they're serious people, and they're really a relic of what America used to be. And, they're just really showing restraint compared to what just the World War II generation would do. When you see the swagger and the attack dogs and the hatred in the eyes of the BLM people, these people, I don't even hate them. They are just literally little boys working for evil who think they have the authority because they work for the delegitimized, occupied federal government.
Alex, it's all boils down to what Ammon was just telling us about, that 59-year-old woman. They came up on her from behind, they hip-checked her, threw her to the ground, and then jumped on her. That's the kind of thuggery that we're seeing here. You're talking about a way of life dying. These are the ranchers and farmers from the 18th and 19th.
Notice they attacked who they thought was weakest first. That is the essence of cowardice and of being a low-life predator. I mean, I can't even get excited unless I'm outnumbered in a fight with men. And then it's pretty exciting, and then I can really become, and I couldn't imagine assaulting a woman.
As we were driving in, Alex, we went across a cattle crossing, a cattle guard that they put in the streets to keep the cattle out of the area. We're standing right across from a sign that has a warning about cows and says that this is an open range. This has been here a long time. This family is not the interloper. Everything, though, is changing. This is 21st century America. As Obama's coming in with his imperial trappings, you've got his gangs of thugs out here attacking people when they can get them separated off as individuals. We saw this happen at the open carry rally in San Antonio. They were very respectable when it was about 1,000 people there with guns slung over their shoulder. But as soon as the crowd started dispersing, they started hassling individuals again.
An instinctive hatred of their food. An instinctive hatred of their food, not being sheep, but actually becoming men again. And again, I don't want to indict the entire bureaucracy. It's been more honorable in the past. It is now, it's rotten. It's like a rotten milk. I mean, the apples are all going rotten. Listen, I've got Steve Quayle on, who's always riveting and informative and would say stuff 10 years ago that I would just roll my eyes at that unfortunately has all come true. It's so wild. He's going to be on this for like an hour and a half at least. But I'm sure he's going to want to get updates as well. So at about 40 after this hour, unless I know you're going to do that interview after that, feel free to take us up to the line where the feds are at. Feel free to, survey stuff. Feel free to be getting shots. We'll be having live feeds, just a video only. While
right now we haven't seen any, Alex. They were saying that just right here, if you look at how close these buttes are right here, they said they had a bunch of snipers out here just a few days ago, but they were just trying to intimidate people. So they laughed about it and they said if that's as good a shot as the snipers are, well, they don't have anything to worry about. But they're now, I haven't seen any yet. We're going to drive around and see if we can find where the marking line is.
Thank you so much, David Knight, for going out there. They've been assaulting reporters as well. It's just unprecedented. And saying that most of the county's a free speech non-zone. Just welcome to North Korea.
Celebrate the spirit of freedom and liberty upon which our nation was founded at InfoWarsShop.com. Molon Lave is ancient Greek for come and take it. This popular design combines both classic Greek Spartan imagery with modern M16 assault rifles. Now available in women's tees and proudly made in the USA. And now you can protect yourself from corrupt cops with the InfoWars dash cam. It's your car's black box that records all that the driver sees and hears. And introducing the Block It Pocket. It renders your phone undetectable while protecting your private data and your health. Or take back your privacy and protect your personal information by getting your very own Detractor cell phone pouch. So get incredibly high-quality, freedom-based products and help fund the revolution at InfoWarsShop.com.